Hello, America, and to our friends around the world, greetings and welcome back. I think everyone has heard the tale of a face that launched 1,000 ships. It was what brought about the fall of Troy. Yes, Helen of Troy. But not just Helen of Troy, Star Trek's not one, not two, but three interpretations of the ancient tale. Captain Kirk had his run-in with Elaan of Troyius. Captain Picard had his run-in with Famke Janssen, pre-X-Men. And, of course, Kelso Washington's native-born, or at least native-graduating, Connor Trinneer, also known as Charles Trip Tucker III. So, before I forget, if you are a little lost on that intro, I have a video regarding the Kelso Theater Pub. I believe I named it the Enterprise Incident at the Kelso Theater Pub. That goes into detail about the premiere episode being broadcast or being shown at the Kelso Theater Pub when it premiered. Anyway, Heinrich Schliemann was captivated by the ancient tale of Troy, the Illiad, Homer's epic. People said he was a fool, that it was just a fairy tale, that it didn't never happen. So he went and, as an amateur, did what archaeologists scoffed. Sound familiar? If this isn't ringing any bells to what's happening in modern archaeology, check out Jimmy Corsetti, Bright Side or Bright Insight, his channel, where he has been challenging, along with other notable amateur archaeology enthusiasts, about Göbekli Tepe, which is, fascinatingly enough, in the same region, Turkey. Troy was on the Mediterranean side of Turkey. And Göbekli Tepe, Pot-Bellied Hill, is also in Turkey. A lot of things happened there, but in this case, Heinrich Schliemann raised the money and went there. He didn't just discover Troy, he discovered so many different layers of Troy. And I don't recall which number he had discovered that connected to Homer's epic, but it's the fact that Troy had been built and collapsed, rebuilt and collapsed dozens of times. But that's not what this is about. This is about Star Trek. And as I have covered, science fiction, in particular, Star Trek, has been a vehicle to offer commentary on modern issues, such as my paralleling Mao Zedong in the mid-60s with the near 55 million souls that were lost under his regime. But this one is a bit different. This one delves deep into our own ancient myths and stories and gives it a futuristic twist. All right, so what do we got here? We've got Liz Taylor, who was cast as Helen of Troy, in addition to all of this. So I just threw that in there for a little bit of fun. But right now, I want to go full red pill on something the woke critics will never admit. Star Trek has been dropping absolute nukes on the oldest simp story in Western civilization, Helen of Troy. Yeah, the face that launched 1,000 ships, started a 10-year war, and turned that part of the world into a graveyard because one woman bounced with Paris. 3 episodes, 3 different centuries of Star Trek, same ancient trope, but with phasers, dilithium, and 0 apologies. We're talking Elaan of Troyius, 1968, The Perfect Mate, 1992, and Precious Cargo. What was that, 2003 or something like that? I can't remember. I have to apologize for not checking and verifying my notes. So it's these three are the same DNA as Homer, but Star Trek asked the question the Iliad never dared. What if Helen wasn't just hot? Because remember, if you go into the ancient stories, Helen wasn't just you know the catalyst for the Trojan War. There were issues of men attempting to kidnap her, courting her. Even Odysseus was one of her suitors originally. So, what if Helen wasn't just hot? What if she was bioengineered to make men lose their minds? Now, if you remember in the original series, Nurse Chapel asks the green guy, "What is it?" And he goes into detail about the tears, that the women's tears have a biochemical substance that cause men to lose their minds. And that may not be bioengineered, but it still results in some mega simping going on. And what if the Federation kept writing that story over and over, because deep down, we still know it's happening today. I mean, look at the what is it? The paid site everybody makes fun of, the homely ceiling fans. So how many unhappily married men uh, are funding that? I mean, just watch whatever. Ugh. So let's get ready. Let's get into it. Put a flag emoji in the comments if you don't have a direct comment or a question. If you have one of those or both, feel free to throw those in. I'd love to hear your input. So let's begin with the original series, Helen. The one with the biochemical tear ducts. So Captain Kirk is hauling a spoiled alien princess, Elaan, to marry some man from the enemy planet to stop a war. Sound familiar? Helen was supposed to marry Menelaus, but gets a little horizontal frisky with Paris and Troy. In fact, Paris's sister has visions of doom of the fate of Troy, but they leave that part out. Here's the twist: Elaan's tears, literal love potion. Number 9. One drop on your skin and you're done. Captain Kirk gets infected, starts simping hard, almost wrecks the Enterprise because she cried and it got onto his hand. But he had at first true love, and that love was the Enterprise. This is Helen 2.0, not just hot, weaponized hotness. Now, ask yourself this question. For what reason is your enemy, who already knows about this biochemical agent in the women of your enemy, what reason are you going to marry this woman who has the potential to turn you into a pleading, begging simp with one fake cry? I didn't like you side-eyed me. Ah, ah, ah. Oh, there. And then tears come down and you're sucker punched for life. All right, so they call her a dolman. The dolman doesn't start the war with beauty. She starts it with mind control. And as I said, Captain Kirk only beats it because Mr. Spock is the ultimate wingman who knows that Captain Kirk's only love is the Enterprise. Now we segue 100 years into the future. we have a different captain of a different Enterprise. We have the future X-Men, Professor X and Jean Grey, interacting. But this one was grown in a test tube for maximum Coomer damage. Fast forward to the 24th century. Now we've got Kamala, played by Famke Janssen, literally a genetic engineered empathic metamorph. She imprints on whatever man she's near and becomes his perfect fantasy. Oh, yeah. Those S robots that, so many are making videos about saying, oh, yes, please. The Cherry 2000 come to real life. The people, the women that hate on those would most probably hate this episode. Captain Picard spends the whole episode blue, with a sack of blue, because duty. This is the Illiad on steroids. Helen isn't just stolen; she's custom built. Now, granted, the Ferengi, future Rom actor, if I'm not mistaken, makes his debut. Rom, the Ferengi brother of Quark from Deep Space Nine, is attempting to take Famke Janssen for himself. So this custom-built woman, she's making every man on the ship ready to die for her. Remember, Data ends up escorting her because he can't be influenced by her, and results in an issue in 10 Forward. So the episode ends with her marrying a diplomat whom she's never met, and he has nearly no interest in her. His only issue is trade. How can we lock down prosperous, guaranteed trade? The peace treaty. So this is Helen, who imprints herself upon Captain Picard, and then is destined to be with a man who is more interested in performing his job, which is great. There's nothing wrong with professionalism. That leads us into our final entry with Trip Tucker of Enterprise. The episode opens with Trip Tucker kicked back in his quarters playing the harmonica, and a ship pulls up side next to his window, and Archer says, hey, you feel like making a house call? And that leads to crazy shenanigans. One member of the other ship's crew gets stuck on the Enterprise. The primary ship, the alien ship, takes off with a vengeance. In the process, Padma Lakshmi's character wakes up, and between her and Trip Tucker, they make an escape, landing on a jungle planet where, of course, they have to strip down to practically nothing because, well, TV censors. And, our sensitivities. Regardless, and Trip Tucker, Southern gentleman to the end, somebody who puts the do in gooder. Because remember, it was only in another episode where he was teaching somebody how to read whose culture forbade it to be able to read, and he took a severe beating. So, and Tucker was, he was never shy about calling out T'Pol on what he felt were the Vulcans' hindrances on humanity's progress. But we go back here to Padma Lakshmi and Trip Tucker. They have to not only survive on this jungle planet in the high humidity, but then they also have to evade capture. And it ends with the classic, when I am in charge, I make the rules. So in a few months, come visit me. So these are all different interpretations of the classic thousands of years old tale of Helen of Troy. And if you're not familiar with the original, go back and look into all of these different variations. Look at how young this woman, Helen of Troy, was, as she was being aggressively pursued. That must not have been a pleasant experience to be a preteen and having so many suitors begging, demanding, buying, bribing, kidnapping. Such an odd world, but it's really not changed. I mean, we've got women, charging men for flatulence in a jar or some craziness, or stained garments. Anyway, thank you for checking this out. And if you haven't seen any of these episodes, check them out. And before I sign off, there is one thing that I did really want to do with this, and that is I would like you to examine the cultural observations that each interpretation of the Helen of Troy it makes, whether it's the original series, the Next Generation, or Enterprise. Look at how each generation's story has changed. You have a woman who is barbarous, ill-tempered, spoiled, and being called out on it. Captain Kirk even gives her she asks, "What is a spanking?" And he describes it as a corporal punishment, for misbehaving women. Then you have essentially Captain Picard doing everything to not simp, but desperately wanting to simp. And then you have Trip Tucker kind of doing a bit of both, dealing with a spoiled brat and having to match her energy, which is a mistake on its own. Yeah, we'll get into that later. But they tried to blend the two versions from the original series and Next Generation for Trip Tucker. But definitely the lesson is, in the 60s, the writers of Star Trek were much more tapped into what was reality and how to convey that to the masses. Man or woman, young or old, they were able to tap into how to write characters. And unfortunately, over the last 35 years, we've become so. You ever see in the Olympics the martial artists that wear the full super pads around their heads and torsos and arms? Yeah, that's us, but three times as much. That's our society, but three times as much of the cushioning because, sensitivities. All right. So, again, if you haven't seen any of these episodes, if you haven't even seen the Elizabeth Taylor version of Helen of Troy, if you haven't read the tale, do yourself a favor and check any one, if not all of them, out. Do the like, subscribe, share, flag emoji in the comments, actual comment, a text comment or question. Have at it. Have yourself a good day.